Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Barbara Wolin, and I'm the manager of the animal facilities. I'm going to ask you to please excuse me if I move around a little bit, because I'm used to sitting at a big, long table with all of you and not to being in the front of the room. So bear with me, please. So I manage the animal facilities here at Hunter College. We have a centralized animal facility on the 15th floor of this building that is shared by the departments. And then we also have a couple of labs that use fish on the 6th floor. By standards of most places, we have a fairly small facility. The only thing we currently use here are rodents and fish. We have used lots of birds in the past, and we will again, but primarily we're rodents here. I'm the manager of the facility. I am a laboratory animal technologist. I have an animal science degree. We also have a veterinary technician who works with us, a veterinarian, and the people who provide care to our animals here are also veterinary technicians. Do you guys know what a veterinary technician is? Okay. If you've ever been to a vet's office with a pet, they're usually the person who will draw the blood and run the lab work and maybe restrain your animal and assist in surgery. So essentially a nurse for animals. Okay, so I'm going to start out by asking you guys a few questions. I want to see, what you generally know or have heard about the use of animals in research. So this should be a fairly easy one. What animal is most widely used in lab animal research?
Is it mice?
Yep, it is. It's about 90, I think at this point it's like 96%. Yeah. It used to be rats, but now it's mice. Anybody want to venture a guess on why we use so many mice?
Does it have anything to do with the cough? Is that part of it?
It could be, but it isn't actually. It makes sense, but yeah.
Is it a comparable animal model? Like, is it comparable to humans?
You're getting there. You're getting really close. What it is now we have the technology to create transgenic or genetically modified mice. Okay, so in mice we can insert or remove a human genome so that in a mouse we can mimic a human condition. Okay. It is particularly easy to do this in mice and in zebrafish. It is difficult to do it in other animals. Not impossible, but not practical. So this is why we use so many mice these days. Sorry, you can just leave. Thank you, Christine. Thanks very much. So that's why we use so many mice. And your idea of cost sort of enters into it also. Number one is the fact that we can genetically modify them and get a very good model of a human condition. The second thing is that they can be housed in a very small area. And you can get many generations in a very short period of time. And that's very helpful. Okay. You can't use them for everything. But there are many, many things. Here, for instance, we had a researcher who used them to study Lou Gehrig's disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. They're a very good model for that. There are many conditions that we can model in transgenics. So lots and lots of those. Most facilities do use rats, but not in the large numbers that we used to. You cannot create a transgenic rat. You can, but it's very difficult and it's very expensive. At this point, dogs, cats, and primates are really only used in projects where you cannot possibly use any other animal. Many facilities these days, however, do use some farm animals, especially mini pigs. And when you talk about something being very similar to a human, they are very similar to a human, especially their pulmonary systems and their skin. So it's kind of a different skew than what you might have thought we would be using. I'm also going to give you some information about how the regulations have evolved and what regulations cover the use of animals in research, because this will also give you some idea of why we choose the animals that we choose. Okay. So, can anyone tell me what is the primary regulation in the United States that covers the use of animals in research? Okay. It's called the Animal Welfare Act. Okay. And the Animal Welfare Act was written in 1966, so it's really quite old. And it is the one real law, federal law, that covers the use of animals in research. I mean, it's not a law in respect of, running a red light kind of a law, but it is a series of regulations that are enforced by government inspectors, federal inspectors who come in and look at facilities. They come from the USDA, the animal welfare portion of the USDA, and they come in and they make sure that you're in compliance with all the guidelines and all the regulations. And the people who do come in and inspect from that agency, they are veterinarians. And they come in unannounced and just can walk in anywhere they want to. Animal facilities, labs, look at your records, whatever they want, at any time they want. So the Animal Welfare Act was written in 1966, and it was written in response to a public outcry. Okay? And what the public was concerned about was they were afraid that their pet animals were being stolen out of their yards or whatever and used for research. Okay? It was an overstatement, but it wasn't completely incorrect. What used to happen at that time was there was something called dealers. And they could actually take animals out of a yard, although they were more likely to get animals from a pound or a shelter. And they would condition them, as in, treat any medical problems they might have, vaccinate them, and then resell them to research institutions. So research institutions were not stealing people's animals, but these other people may very well have been. But that basically affected dogs and cats. So that was what people were concerned about. So they were concerned about dogs, cats, and anything that they considered to be a pet animal. So dogs, cats, rabbits, guinea pigs, things like that. As a result of this being really written by lay people and not by scientists or even animal welfare advocates, it excluded rats, mice, birds, fish bred for research. All excluded from the Animal Welfare Act. Okay? So there we are. Practically everything we use in a facility is excluded under the Animal Welfare Act. Okay? If you have one rabbit or you have one guinea pig in your facility, then you're covered. But if you don't have any of those animals, if you don't have any covered species, you're not covered. So it's really an odd sort of an act. Okay? It looked some years ago like they were really going to expand and cover all vertebrate animals because there was a lot of pressure on Congress to include everything, but that just never happened. And not that this law hasn't evolved. The Animal Welfare Act has certainly evolved because many things have been added in over the years. Things about exercise in dogs and stimulation of primates, emotional, mental stimulation in primates. So things were added in, but it never came to cover the animals that we primarily use. Okay. So what do you think? Does that mean, yeah?
I just have a question. Are primates covered under the animal?
Absolutely. The animals that aren't covered are rats, mice, birds, and fish bred for research. Primates are number one. Mostly because people related to them, to their intelligence, so they were included. Absolutely. Yeah.
When you say bred for research, so you can't just animals that you just buy from an animal store, are they covered?
They are.
Okay.
They are. You wouldn't really want to use those animals for research, and we'll talk a little bit later about why you wouldn't want to use them, but they are covered. Okay. Primarily when they're saying use bred for research, what they're trying to exclude are things like wild-caught animals. Well, caught animals are covered. So like if you were using a vole as opposed to a mouse, that might be a covered species. Okay, so what do you think? All these institutions that have all these species that aren't covered under the Animal Welfare Act, nobody regulates them? What do you guys think? Okay, well in New York State, they're fully regulated, but not in every state, okay? Every state has the opportunity to have its own regulations for the use of animals in research. Some states do, some states don't. It's pretty coastal. The coasts do tend to have them. The middle of the country tends not to have them, but it's definitely state by state. So in New York State, animals in research labs and research labs themselves are regulated and licensed by the State Department of Health. Okay? And what they do is they basically take what the Animal Welfare Act says and they apply it to all vertebrate animals. Makes sense, right? So they apply it to all vertebrate animals. And they also inspect, just like the USDA, but they send in veterinary technicians, like my staff, several times a year to check the animals, the facility, the use of those animals. Okay? So you definitely have that level. And many states have this. California has it. Massachusetts has very strict laws about the use of animals in research. It's definitely on a state-by-state basis. Okay. Now things change once you work at an institution that takes federal funding. Federal funds change everything. Okay? And there are very few institutions that don't take some federal funds, you know, few and far between. So once you do take federal funds from NIH, NSF, NIDA, NIMH, any of those, okay, you fall under the OPRR, the Office for Protection from Research Risk.